Okay, it's day 130 of this sweet potato germination experiment, and you can see some residue of the fertilizer from last time in the Miracle Grow. The water on the bottom tray is taking forever to go away, so I've been watering a lot, especially since I only fertilized just 2 days ago. But yeah, there's been lush growth, but at this point viewership is low. I'd like to see what's inside underneath the soil.
So I'm just feeling my way around like a rodent here with gloves, and I don't want to do anything too hastily. I'm feeling around the roots, and I don't want to break any potential tubers down there.
Very, very interesting. We've got these sweet potatoes forming. I don't know how many of them there are. And over here, I think that might just be the original sweet potato. So I'm going to dig all of this up and we'll have a good look. So here's a more zoomed out view.
Here's some more digging footage. I'm feeling various sorts of roots and tubers, and everything's all interconnected. This whole pot is full of roots. And see, that's the original tuber, and some other smaller ones attached as well. They look like carrots. So those are the vines upturned, and you can see where I cut them. And there are several carrot-like tubers attached, and also the main original tuber. And that thing's in mint condition. It's got some, vines growing out of it and some roots growing out of the other end, the pointy end. But other than that, I'm amazed at how that thing has held up in mint condition despite all the watering I did. I figured it would have rotted by now. There was no point in harvesting the original tuber, so I just harvested the new immature tubers, which undoubtedly would have grown into full tubers like the original one if given enough dirt, time, and there wasn't, a spider mite infestation. My remaining task for this pot was to sift through all the dirt and put handfuls of it into this old potting mix bag that still has some soil in it. I just wanted to look for tubers, and I found some too, but the tons of root fragments, the white thin root fragments that are in there are okay. I just don't want sweet potato vine germinations to occur during my next growing experiment in this pot. The harvested tubers were obviously covered in really nasty dirt and mud, and who knows what's been in there. A bunch of bugs, their carcasses, their feces and whatnot. So, also I just don't know what was in that original potting mix. A variety of compost and just rotting things. And, there could be residual pesticide, and I'll talk more about that later. But for the moment, I'm comfortable using a backup sponge that I normally use for scrubbing the sink only, and just kind of really soaping these things up and rinsing them off in hot tap water. That would get rid of the bulk of the dirt, so I could prepare for the next phase and start cooking them.
These are the two big pieces I had in mind. I mean, some of these others are not bad as well. The shapes really intrigue me. Like this one, for instance. I think that was destined to be your prototypical potato shape if given enough time and soil. I can't even imagine how cramped that pot would have gotten if all of these had grown to their maximal size. So not all of these are worth my time to process, like these. Why would I bother? I mean, they're just tiny, so some of these broke off. I probably won't bother with those either.
My next step was to let these boil for a few minutes. I eventually let them go at a full boil for 5 minutes, and there's 3 purposes to this. Number 1 is to dilute and remove any residual dirt or contaminating substances. Number 2 is to kill any pathogens that might be on there, whether they be bacteria, protists, fungi, viruses or whatnot. And number 3 is to deactivate some of that beta-cyfluthrin. That's the most potent pesticide I used. There's a chance that some of it might lurk in the soil on these tubers. It turns out that beta-cyfluthrin decomposes, it degrades well before it reaches boiling point, so that's good.
So I drained all the water, and they're giving off that characteristic, cooked sweet potato smell. So it smells pretty good. I'm going to cut off the parts that are sort of, broken off and rubbed in that pretty nasty mud outside, because I'm just not psychologically comfortable with that. But, in a survival situation, you wouldn't care, right? So, yeah, I'm just going to get rid of a tiny bit. That basically is cooked sweet potato already. So at the ends, cut that away. probably just for the pieces that I plan on eating. But you know, after a boil like that, it's pretty much over for any pathogens. I mean, that's pretty standard sweet potato stuff there. It smells pretty good. Alright, so I'm going to put it in the oven. So I think glass is probably the easiest material. I already have the oven set on broil. No, nothing elaborate. I just slap some aluminum foil on top to prevent too much evaporation and burning. It's already really hot in there. Alright, so I boiled these and I baked these. I think I'm ready to try them. That's good. I like sweet potato fries, you know. Well, obviously they're not fried, but that tastes pretty good. I thought I'd have a lot more apprehension about eating the skin with all that nasty dirt and mud and, you know, potentially some insecticide on it. But, you know, after all that boiling and washing, I think they're pretty safe to eat. Plus, a lot of the insecticides that I used have a very short half-life, so they would have degraded by now, or mostly. So yeah, I have no seasoning. It's pretty good.
And this concludes my sweet potato germination experiment from tubers. So it was an early harvest, but I didn't want to wait any longer. It's unfortunate that a huge spider mite infestation hit, otherwise we could have seen much bigger tubers. And as you'll notice, I saved the pot for something else, so stay tuned for a new growing experiment to come soon.